right, it is time for another episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. I'm John Chen, your host, author of the book Engaging Virtual Meetings, and recently minted CSP, which stands for Certified Speaking Professional. So it's exciting to have that here. It's one of only 400 active speakers to have earned this designation, and my guest was actually here to see me receive that. So meanwhile, for if you're watching this, check out this. Make sure if you're watching live, subscribe, share, like, or comment. If you comment live, we might actually bring your comment live into the show. If you want all of our podcasts, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online, subscribe on one of your 13 favorite platforms, and you can get a new episode every Wednesday. By the way, the number one platform is now not Spotify anymore, but the number one platform is Apple Podcasts. Backward to this part too, I'm so excited. We're getting so close. On October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd is the Engaging Conference. It is the first time it has ever been hybrid. And I'm talking about speakers. I have 3 CPAEs, which means that those are all Hall of Fame speakers. These are like the top 125 speakers in the world. I've got 3 of them. And so if you want to register, you can register for a free ticket on day 1, engagingvirtualmeetings.com/CON, or you can upgrade to the virtual VIP with all the recordings, or for the first time ever, attend in person. It means I can actually touch you, you can be there, and you can actually see all the behind the scenes of what's going on. Now, back to the show. I've got 2 amazing guests today. You get a twofer. You get a twofer on. So this first guest, an award-winning facilitator, consultant, author, speaker, and program director of the Center of Excellence in Innovation Leadership in the School of Business. Was it in the home of the #1 MBA in Canada? That's big. She's also an accomplished watercolorist who's trekked the Himalayas, wow, scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef, oh, I'm PADI certified, and whitewater rafted in northern India. I want to know what class. She is passionate, but a rather underwhelming cook. Please, let's welcome Leanne McAlear. There we go. And now let me see. No, and I'm not sure, Leanne, I'm not sure if I got your last name right. What's the correct pronunciation of your last name?
Okay, the correct pronunciation is, think of a Mack truck and a Lear jet. And McAlear. That's it. And it's a pretty good description of who I am.
Oh my goodness. Well, why don't we take a moment for you to introduce yourself and who you are, and then of course we'll bring this other guest. I won't make him wait though, right?
Well, I mean, you pretty well captured my profile, but I think that what probably is most important is that I am deeply interested in bringing out the best of the people with whom I work in whatever field that might be. So while I happen to have a passion for innovation and work primarily in that field, I work with leaders globally. And I'm so moved by the impact of leadership on people.
Yeah.
And also how that plays when you're working virtually, because it's entirely different. So I'm fascinated by your topic and really eager to discuss more.
Well, that's why our next guest brought you on too. He says you got amazing experience and stories to share, so get ready for those. But this gentleman too, who's going to come join us, we got a chance to know each other at National Speakers Association's Influence Conference when we sat together. He's been focused on AI since 1997. When Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov, for you chess fans. He was named the Speaker of the Year this year, 2024, by the largest CEO coaching network in Canada. He presents internationally at 70 virtual and in-person events a year, as well as being an AI advisor to CEOs, executive teams, and boards, which is why I sat in the front row of his event and said the word beer, which he will never forget in his entire life. His book, Blindsided, we got to learn more about that, is a #1 international bestseller in 80 countries. He hangs out with American Express, Barclays, but he's most excited to be on this amazing podcast with me. Let's welcome the one and only big-time dancer, Jim Harris. Woohoo! We do have a dance contest occasionally on this part. Jim, how you doing today?
Hey, it's great to be on with you, John.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a little bit of your intro. Do you want to do anything else to introduce who you are and what you do?
100% of my presentations these days are on AI. As you mentioned, I've been talking about AI since '97.
Yes.
But frankly, clients weren't interested in AI talks back then because if you think about it, IBM's Deep Blue was $100 million project.
Yes.
So it was only large organizations that were focused on AI. And in 2016, AlphaGo, which is owned by Google, beat Lee Sedol in Go. Again, only a large organization. But what has happened is OpenAI's ChatGPT is the fastest adopted technology in the world's history, and it really has democratized AI. So that's what I focus on these days. 100% of my presentations are on AI.
Wow. So, well, let's talk a little bit around some of that part in AI. Oh, well, let's talk about the first part, which is in your impression, Jim. This is kind of like the story that I have about virtual meetings. Like we were doing virtual meetings for 38 years, but nobody cared. Nobody would pay for it. And AI. So I'd love to hear, like, what do you in Jim's version? What was that crossover to now the world is literally interested, and as on the speaker circuit, right? You got to have at least one AI speaker, or you're kind of like out of the times. What was that crossover for you? What did you think, Jim?
Well, just like it was, I was a Zoom subscriber pre-pandemic, but frankly, you couldn't get clients to do a virtual meeting. Everything had to be in person, even though there were huge benefits to virtual. For instance, back in 1995, I was at a conference and the CEO of Intel came into the conference for 20 minutes to present. Now, you would have never got Andy Grove to fly to another part of the country and take a whole day of travel to speak for 20 minutes. He was running a multi-billion-dollar company, but he was willing to do it for 20 minutes from his work desk because it was highlighting the technology of video conferencing that Intel was trying to sell at that time. So you could get Andy when you couldn't get him otherwise. And that was a powerful message. So we can actually have fascinating presenters in our conferences if we're willing to embrace virtual, which we would never get if it had to be in person.
Leanne, do you have something to add?
Yeah. Well, I was really interested in the question, which was not so much about Zoom, but about AI and what happened that made AI all of a sudden be so pervasive. And I can remember, maybe you can too, I don't know, seeing, it was about 2 years ago, seeing a commercial for Ryan Reynolds owned a mobile phone company. Okay.
Oh, right.
In Canada. It was called Mint Mobile.
Right.
And he came on and his commercial was this. I just used ChatGPT to craft this commercial. And then he read the commercial and with his typical style, it was fantastic. It was funny. And it introduced ChatGPT to the world in a way it had not been before. And I swear to you, that's an inflection point, because the moment that happened, everyone went to their computer and started looking at what they were doing is they were using ChatGPT to create poems for people. That's how it all started, or lyrics. And before you know it, it was like a wildfire. What do you think, Jim?
Well, ChatGPT attracted 100 million users in the first 60 days after it launched, November 30th, 2022. So it was the fastest adopted technology in the world's history. And it reminds me of the birth of the World Wide Web in 93. We had the internet before that.
Yes.
But it was the graphical user interface of Mosaic and then Netscape that gave birth to the web. And back in 93, I was telling my clients, this is going to change everything. And they looked at me like I had three heads. right?
You do
And
have
I don't know. So, this is more revolutionary, more transformative, but the biggest difference is it's happening at warp speed. So we're seeing more change in the business environment in a shorter period of time than ever before. And executives and companies and entire industries are not architected to respond to this level of change at this rate of speed.
Now, let me just check this out. So I want to give, I'm going to take you off screen for just a second here because I want to show something from one of my very good friends, Rick Altman, put together this this presentation. He talked about the race to 1 million. So let's take a look, right? Netflix took, let's see how long, 3.5 years to get to 1 million, right? Our good friends Kickstarter, Airbnb, those 2.5 years. Twitter, now known as X, took 2 years. You know, a whole bunch of these others came in. All right, it's like the 7 months, 5 months, 2.5. Now it looks like you're waiting for me to click on ChatGPT, but it's there because if you watch carefully, right? Look at that. It took 5 days to get to 1 million. That pace, that level, and that pace, Jim and Leanne, of innovation. You know, this kind of connects all of our topics together. Is that one? It's innovation. And two, it's the pace of innovation. And number three, it's at a pace no one's ever seen before. So very, very few people know how to deal with that. I mean, the pandemic is another great example of it. It's something that changed the world, right, overnight. And yeah, so what are some of the strategies to deal with this pace of innovation? Either one of you.
Well, I'll jump in. First off, as a presenter, as a speaker, on the speaker circuit, I have a principle, which is the 80-20 rule. 80% of my presentation that I'm presenting today is tried and true material, the awesome, awe-inspiring, head-spinning humor, all those key elements. But I have to, in every presentation, include 20% new material that I didn't present yesterday or last week.
Yes.
And if I am always doing this, I am evolving quickly as a speaker.
Yes.
I saw a speaker not too long ago who was using acetates, right?
No, wait. For those, it was like, Jim, Go is a game that has stones. It's an ancient game. And acetates are the clear sheets with the lighted overhead projector with a lens that puts stuff out. The last time I used it was I actually printed a outline for a painting and projected it on my wall and actually painted for it. That's the last time I used an overhead projector.
So Marshall McLuhan said the medium is the message. Yeah. If I'm talking about innovation and change,
yes,
I can't hear you if you're not practicing. If what you're showing to me, demonstrating, does not wow me, engage me, make me think, then I can't hear your message. And so we have to practice what we preach. That would be one thing I'd say.
What about Leanne?
Yeah. And here's the other thing, because there's this wonderful convergence of virtual and AI. So you think to yourself, how can we move organizations more quickly in the adopting of AI for any of the many disciplines for which it can apply? And the answer is through virtual training. Because you're not going to be able to get, for a couple of reasons. Number one, there aren't enough people who are expert to go into every organization and show you what is possible with AI, but we can do that virtually. That's number one. And number two, the way that AI will work best is if every person in the organization feels empowered to play.
Yeah, this early stage, you have to play it. This is what my number one advice is: open a window, try and do some stuff, and as you play, you'll certainly discover something of value, right?
It's true. And if you think about it, a key way for that to happen is to someone virtually to say, okay, we're going to go here, open it up, take a look. What about this? As opposed to waiting for the, guru to come and show you what to do. This is really about democratization attached to an incredible tool that can really help, right?
So I'm going to go back to Leanne for a second here now, too. I want to shift to this part. And we're talking about two amazing people who have skills in this area. I want to go back to that moment, right, in that pandemic and said when the world went virtual. And so I really want to know what did the two of you do or were thinking about, as that world changed? And of course, how does virtual fit into that? So, Leanne, how did you deal with that massive worldwide change?
So here's what happened. For those who don't know, Jim and I are life partners along also with business partners.
No.
Yes. And we're both really good dancers. So here's the other thing that happened. So our calendars had been booked, John. They were full, and in one day they went white.
Yes.
Right. We have staff here, it was crazy. And so I would say that it took us maybe a week. I'm serious. It took no more than a week. We completely rearranged our workspaces.
Yeah.
So Jim is the thought leader with his, we created that within a couple of days in his office. And we got green screens, and here's the thing. If you're going to try something new, whether it's this virtual or it's AI, you gotta give it a go. And so when we started giving it a go, we realized that we then had to change a number of things about how we were performing, like how we worked, because the sage on the stage doesn't work on this. You go to sleep if all I do is talk to you, right? And it doesn't look like that. It looks much worse. So
it's a black screen.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Because people just didn't know what to do. They all went to, they all turned off their cameras. So we had to become really good, really fast. And we did.
What about you, Jim? What's your version of March of 2020?
So before the pandemic, this is a staggering stat. 70% of the cost of traditional training and development was flying people to a central location, putting them up in a hotel, feeding them, boom. And so, but that was the training model. It had to be in person. And so if you strip 70% of the cost out of training, that is huge benefit to organizations. And what the pandemic did is it broke down the barrier, the mental barrier to virtual, whether that's presentations or training and development. But when you move to a new platform, you can't just take what was successful in the old way of working. So, radio had a tough problem moving into movies because the silent era of movies had a tough time moving into the talkies.
Right.
So the new medium offers new value, new ways of working. And there's some principles, and I'm sure you know all these, but one of them is you can't cover the same volume of material. You should cut your material in half. And the other half is engagement and breakouts and feedback and quizzes and games and icebreakers. And Leanne did something with the leadership of the Toronto Police Service. And it started off being, can you do 40 dates? And now it's more than 200. And she gets the highest ratings ever because you can actually, our participants are amazing if we unlock the amazing insights and stories that exist with them. Like I remember this, one of her participants is a piper. And so she found this out. So the next day he was in full regalia, okay? The kilt and the pipe
You're talking about bagpipes, right?
Yeah,
Bagpipes.
exactly.
Yeah. It was
exactly.
great.
And so he was bagpiping the entire group. And then the other thing is, it's really important. We can't sit still for 8 hours in a day. we have to have physical exercises and get up. So Leanne would get somebody who was involved in yoga or stretching or something. So then she gets somebody, and this guy's still in his kilt, and they're going, okay, stick your foot up on the table. And everybody goes,
no. But that's the moment that most people remember too, when this unexpected thing happens.
Right.
Right.
I'll tell you another one. So this is police officers, right? They're fantastic, by the way, fantastic. We did thousands. And so there's 25 officers on the screen, and we hear bam, like that, bam. And one of the guys goes like this, and he gets up and he leaves the screen. And I'm like, guys, do we know what's up? Like, what's happening? No,
right.
no. So here's what happened. Some really mentally challenged thief. This is a place where coppers live, okay? this guy in the middle of the day breaks into his house. So this police officer, big guy, goes, what's going on? Runs downstairs in his slippers, and there's a robber there, right? There's a thief there, and he goes, whoa, and he runs away. It's winter, and my guy runs after him, okay, in his slippers down the streets. This is in Canada, okay, racing down the street to try and catch the robber, the thief.
Okay.
And then what happens is he sees that he's going to go into a building. He calls the canine unit, who's around the corner. The dogs come. Okay, so all that is happening, but it's off the screen, right? It's off the screen.
I put it on the screen.
I see that. And then at the end of the day, we always had a quiz. Like they want to know people have learned. So they have this quiz, and you have to take the quiz to pass the day. Okay. Yeah. So at 4:00, this guy comes running back into the room, sits down. There he is on the screen. He goes, is the quiz over yet? He wants to take his quiz, and he's been out chasing a robber. Right? Fantastic. Isn't that great?
So
I have more fun in virtual.
Thank you so much, Leanne. It really is those moments that were the unexpected are always, to me, that like that's the memorable moment when stuff happens. Like one of them was that you reminded me. Somebody goes in the chat. He goes, "I'll be right back. Something's on fire."
Right, it's terrible.
Right, and then he comes back like 20 minutes later. He comes back and he takes a picture, and then he shows it online, the picture, and he goes, "Well, let me tell you what happened." Right, and this is like, remember in 2020, all the crazy stuff was happening, right? At least here in America, like all the crazy stuff is happening, and so somebody had lit a wood chair on fire in their neighborhood, and they had to create a fire brigade with buckets because a hose wouldn't reach it to put it out. And so he said, here's a picture of 20 of his neighbors creating a bucket brigade to put this fire out.
Crazy, man.
Yeah, and that's that's one of the things I remember. One of the things you talked about was playing. I really love this part because I did corporate team building before, and I do really believe in the power of play. And I don't think Leanne has seen it. Maybe Jim hasn't seen this, but this is my studio. This is a live shot. Like this is you on screen, right? And this is the result of playing. This is like thousands of failures. I tell people there's at least 4,000 failures here to be able to get to do some of this stuff where, right, I can hit this button, I hit this lever, and now, right, we have Jim's dance music, right? So things like that. This is what thousands of failures. I'm just kind of curious, like as you developed your studios, what was important to you to have in your studios, or what were some of the funny failures that you had leading into like successes in each of your virtual studios?
So yep. I just want to say, look at this, John. There we go. So I was in the very first week of the pandemic, a friend of mine who runs a podcast interviewed me, and behind him was a monitor that had my logo and image on it. And it took me an entire 1 second to look at it and say, say to myself, I need one of those. And so if you pay attention here, you'll see there's your book, right?
Right.
So it's dynamic. It's a monitor embedded in the bookcase. So how can we use these little tools, tricks, tips to create, a more engaging boom experience for our users? So then I was on the #1 podcast globally for CIOs and CTOs.
Ooh.
And I had Joel's image and his corporate logo on the thing behind me here. And he took one look at it, and the next day, boom, there was a monitor behind him. And for every podcast he's ever done since then, his client's logo is up there. But here's the thing. I've been on with thousands of speakers on Zoom calls and MS Teams and companies, and I don't see anybody adopting it. Now, you have it virtually here, but why do people not pivot and change? And really, we have to pivot and change and innovate because we're in the fastest changing environment. We have to be open to play, like go where no man has gone before. Boom, to the pool in the backyard and work on those comfy chairs. So really, we have to play if we're going to be at the cutting edge, which is back to that 20% principle. 20% of what I do every single time should be new, innovative, a twist, new images, new videos. How do I keep it fresh always? And frankly, this makes things more exciting. Now, we as adults have become addicted to feeling competent. We have become very comfortable, right? Oh my gosh, you're in the forest, Leanne's in a car
No, that's
now.
not a forest, that's a car wash.
Leanne's in a car wash.
Look at that right there. That's a car wash.
It's really tough to speak while you're being upstaged.
I like it. It's like Ken Jeong's comedy special. Don't you ever upstage me, Leanne. And now Leanne can do her best Chewbacca impersonation, right?
Sorry, Jim. What were you saying?
I've forgotten. I have no idea.
But I tell Leanne all the time. I tell people that I'll buy any 5 or 10 minutes of engagement by changing something like that screen and have people look at it and going, how's he doing that? Or why am I not doing that? And I'm paying attention, and also you gave me something of value. Leanne, do you have anything else you want to add here? While we're
I think that I'm really interested in the way in which we can engage people with their own environments that's different than we would normally do. So for example, I might have an icebreaker which says, say I'm working, I don't know, in innovation. I might say, I want you to find something in your room, bring it to us, and tell us how it is like innovation for you. Do you know? And then but they've really got to stretch. And a couple of things happen. First of all, they see their environment differently. Good. But second of all, they're using a different part of their brain, which is really important, right? We want as much whole brain attention as we can get. So that's part of it. Yeah.
Well, let's go into that part. So Leanne, I'll go back to you. What has to happen for you, whether either you're presenting or you're attending somebody else's virtual? What are some of the top things that really engage you?
Well, first of all, lately I just want to speak to something I've been noticing lately. I take as many programs as I can. I'm constantly kind of upgrading and learning. And lately I've noticed that people are saying, please keep your camera and your audio on. Now, that didn't happen before. And if you look at the stats for disengagement and disconnection, it's because of the black screen, right? The black screen of death. Like if I'm looking at a screen like this and there's just black boxes, it's deadly. I'm off in no time at all. So I am not an advocate for everyone being, I think you need to take breaks on occasion, especially if you have back-to-back meetings. But I think we have to learn really well what people can actually experience in a day and what actually works for them. Do you know? And it can't be back-to-back Zoom meetings. So what has to happen? First of all, I need fewer slides, more of you, more of me and someone else in the room, more engagement. So anything I can do to engage or to be engaged is really, really important. So, I mean, I always think that the material has to be in and of itself meaningful and helpful, right? Like if I'm doing something really boring, it's not going to matter how much snap I have, right? But to make the best, and I think having really good questions for people is a spectacular way to engage.
So, Leanne, oh, go ahead. You had one other point?
No, that's good.
So, Leanne, one of the things, too, I've taught in a class called The Seeds of Virtual Facilitation, there's a counterintuitive part where I said that conflict or controversy is actually a really key aspect of engagement, so that if you can spark debate, like, I know we're not trying to be more divisive, but in some ways, when you are divisive, that's why people are doing it now, is that it has an engagement factor, right? You have to pick a side. You might have to, decide what's going on. And so that conflict, all right, in the side note, as much as we hate violence, right, everybody loves a good fight. So that's why I thought that was a unique part that I brought up, that when I facilitate, I'm sometimes looking for that controversy, and that controversy, you'll see people come around who are tuned out and come in and going, wait, I got an opinion, right? And then they come into that. So,
I mean, and there's different, like, I'm very interested in that because there's different ways to do it. Like for anyone, I work in the creativity and innovation space quite a lot. Yeah. So if you are at all a fan of De Bono, he would say one way to get that going is to make it possible for people to have a different opinion. So, say, okay, here's the idea. I want everyone to tell me what they like about it. Great, 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 great. Good. Now tell me what you don't like about it, right? Wear your black hat, not just your white hat or your green hat. And those are really good ways still of getting that kind of energy, the energy that you're looking for.
Well, Leanne, you'll love this diversity story. So I taught 6 hats at De Bono. For those who remember, it's a creativity thing. Yeah. Is that I had to teach it to Saudi Arabia, right? And I asked, like, what was one of the best tips? Like, what was one of the best sessions prior to us? Because it's a 7-stage cohort. And they go, well, the coaching one they loved, but they hired a bilingual facilitator. Normally, the whole program is in English. But they said they really needed the bilanguage to really teach the nuances of coaching. And I said, well, that's great, but I don't know, right, Arabic. So one of the things that I did in 6 hats of De Bono is I came up and taught each hat, and I asked the class to come up, what's the Arabic word that means this hat? And there was all this discussion that they didn't agree. But then when they finally did agree, they would teach me the Arabic word for it, which I had to learn. And that process was really great because it helped them really understand what De Bono was trying to do with those hats in a way that helped them learn, and without me having to learn Arabic. So I thought that was really crafty. Jim,
that's very crafty.
Jim, what has to happen for you, right, in a virtual meeting? What are the things you're doing or that you want to see from other people?
So early in the pandemic, I learned something that I thought was great, and I can't remember who it was who did it. But we have this powerful thing, the chat box over on the right, and create a series of hashtags. So hashtag A, capital A, is for aha. And what I want you to do is, while we're going through this podcast, if you hear something that any of the 3 people say that you think is profound, I want you to do a hashtag A and then put what that insight is in the chat. And if everyone who's listening to the stream is doing that, it becomes a self-documenting thing for the session. Yeah. And then hashtag Q is a question that we'll take at the break. Hashtag D is the debate that you were talking about. And we'll set up a debate, pro and con. 2 people pro, 2 people con. We'll do a little debate in the break. And then hashtag BQ is a burning question, which is like, this is a fire outside your house where somebody has started to burn a chair, and we have a brigade and we need to stop everything right now and deal with the fire. So do you have a burning question? That's hashtag BQ. And if you actually call people out we when they come into the meeting, you say, where's everyone coming from? Welcome, all these, while we're waiting for the meeting to start. So there's not dead air. So the 5 minutes beforehand, we're actually engaging people. But once the meeting started, how do we keep engaging them? And then reward people to say, I like to have somebody who's following the chat, not me, because if I'm presenting, I am hyper focused on the material, the slides, and watching the, Hollywood squares of reaction. So is there somebody else who's from the client who is a thought leader, an expert in the content we want to deliver for this client, who knows the company, knows the people, who's tracking these questions and insights? And then I love the tools where we can upvote and downvote questions so that we're getting the questions that are most important to the audience, and we deal with them first. So these are all new tools that didn't exist in the in-person realm. And so the question for me is, how do we take these best practices from online and now transport them to in-person events? And for instance, QR codes allow us to have, Slido or any of its competitors. We can have real-time polling with the answers coming up in real time on the screen, and we can have word clouds, and there are great engagement tools that we have perfected with the virtual world that we now need to take to the in-person world.
And that's the funny part, I think, that I have, Jim. Well, number one, you hit one of our key points here. The N in engage. This is a 6-step method I developed, and it says never lead a meeting alone, right? And whether you can pay a producer or, in this, Jim says he recruited somebody from the class. And let me tell you, when you recruit somebody from the class, all right, they're engaged because they got to pay attention, or they're going to fail their job. And if they're in front of their boss, they're going to fail in front of their boss. Right? That's not a good thing. And so you really can get some engagement from using the best techniques around with this. So I think that's a really key part. I want to go back. Leon, I'm going to give you some extra time to think about this. But Jim, both of you are experts in disruption and innovation, and I think a little bit of the futurist part. So Jim, I really want to know, what do you think the future of virtual and hybrid is? What is the future of virtual and hybrid for you?
So I used to attend an event that was $5,000 for 3 days. I didn't have to pay that because I was one of the presenters, but your audience is limited. But when that same event was online, instead of having 1,500 people, we had 3,500 people. Wow. And the price point shifted from $5,000 down to, $299. And so there is an elasticity of demand. Remember that stat that 70% of the cost of traditional training and education pre-pandemic was it flying, hotels, and meals, and taxis and Ubers. Well, if you've stripped that all out, you can have amazing experiences at a tiny fraction of the price. So this is a huge democratization of training and development. So we are going to have this forever. So if you do put on a big in-person event, you can end up having a huge number of people who are going to experience it without thousands of miles of air travel for a tiny fraction of the price. So I think hybrid is here to stay.
How about you, Leanne?
Here, I work at the Schulich School of Business. Great. It's one of the things I do at York University. And we have fantastic tech for hybrid, fantastic tech, whereby you can be in person with 50 people in person.
Yes.
And the tech is so sensitive that I can move in on people. I can come out. I can move into the room and pull out. Like it's stellar. And I never thought, I had seen that done very poorly for most of the pandemic, like, oh no, not a hybrid in person. damn.
right. Uh-huh.
But this is really quite wonderful, right? So I think that we will continue to have ever more sophisticated ways of managing both these things. And I think that our audience will always be global now. I just
Mm,
do. I mean,
mm.
unless our conference is entirely local for some very specific reason,
Right.
right? And the other thing I just want to say is I have also seen um, uh, holograms start working really well.
I
So,
actually visited that company, right? Howie Mandel invested in it, and Howie was actually there in LA.
right,
And we got to get a few more of these boxes. That box might be a business because they
it is
said
going
that
to be a business.
some keynoters have been able to retain 100% of their in-person costs while being virtual because they're a
Oh,
hologram. They're using that
that's
tech.
it. So there's hologram, and as we use more and more AI, and
Mm.
so for example, Jim and I use an app called HeyGen. I don't know if you know it,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
right? And you can create avatars of yourself that are unbelievably great.
Hmm.
So I think that there's going to be much more range in terms of what we can do than
Yes.
we've even thought about before. Where did Jimmy go?
I don't know, but that's okay. We can deal without them. And the best part here is that maybe you can help out here. Well, what's your best virtual story? So besides the story you already told me, do you have either a best or a worst virtual story in the last 4 years?
In the last 4 weeks, the worst was when well, just things like when the technology goes down and you don't have, like in the beginning we didn't have backup. So
Yeah.
so you're in the middle of a presentation and you lose, power.
Yeah.
Not great, not great. Could do without that. I love I've had some where I had this one class where everyone had a dog. Okay.
Yes.
Everyone in the class had a dog.
Okay.
And the next thing I know, there's a dog who's a howler. And the dog starts howling. And then every dog in that 25 people starts howling. It was impossible. It was just like crazy. So I mean, there's lots that can happen. What was your worst, Jim?
Worst virtual moment, Jim.
Oh my
Worst virtual
goodness.
moment?
Well, early in the pandemic, we had some Zoom bombing, which was
Oh,
really,
yes.
really
Remember that?
terrible.
Yep.
And like people who were the technicians, like I used to work in radio, and we always had a tech person who was
Yeah.
doing the tech work. So that tech person needed to be trained in how to kick someone out of a meeting, lock the meeting, or turn off the image or so on. And I see people, they get caught up in the Zoom bombing phenomena and they freak out and they don't just stay calm and rationally remove
Well,
someone.
I'm always very interested in how naked somebody wants to get on a Zoom, thing,
Well, mostly it's video, but yeah, I know, Leo. So, but we finally had our first Zoom bomber. We kicked him out. We showed the process of kicking like 6 or 7 people out.
Right.
It was live in front of a bunch of meeting professionals. That was the interesting part. And then later on, I've developed so many practices that we had a Zoom bomber in a meeting that was sponsored by Africa Town, right? So it's a black-centered meeting, and we were able to kick this person out where the people on stage didn't even know.
Wow.
They
Great.
were unable to disrupt my meeting, right?
Right.
Because they have no techniques. All right, well, good. We're going to go into the last round of this amazing talk. So this is called the speed round, right? So I want each of you to answer as fast as possible. You can even answer at the same time. Okay. So are you ready for the
Sure.
speed round? Okay. What do you love about your studio?
Oh my gosh, I love my turned out books. And I love this book by John Chen, by the way, about virtual meetings. That's my favorite thing right here.
Great.
That's
I
great.
like The Woman from the 20s because nobody knows what it's like. They just know it's odd. Great.
Oh my God. Best song to dance to?
Oh my gosh. I love Happy by
Pharrell.
Pharrell
Pharrell.
isn't that's one of my faves.
Ba, ba, ba. I like the dance move ones. There's
Oh.
that one.
Uptown
Coordinated
Funk?
dance moves like come on, we know Macarena or something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Cuban Shuffle. Cuban Shuffle. That would have been one. Best place to dance.
Oh, in front of our favorite band live, which does Earth, Wind, and Fire covers, Tower of Power, James Brown, and Chicago. Big horn band from the 1970s.
Okay. My living room.
All right. Describe a hybrid in one word.
Bifurcated.
Okay, bifurcated. I was going to say powerful.
That's because they're both good. All right. The last question. The best word to describe your significant other.
Sexy.
That's good. That's correct.
Fabulous.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I'll leave you with this. Let's see. Leanne, I'll let you go first. If you could magically get people to remember one thing from this interview, what's that one thing?
Engagement.
Ooh. And how about you, Jim?
We have to continually innovate, play, experiment.
There you
Outstanding. Well, now for the two of you, I have this one message, and it sounds like this.
Thank you for attending the performance. And a special thanks to all those who helped with the show.
Thank you, Jim and Leanne. I hope you enjoyed being on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast.
It was fantastic. Woo-hoo! Thank you so much. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Jim and Leanne. All right, let's see. Again, I'm John Chen here. If you're watching this online, please subscribe, share, like, and comment. If you want to subscribe to our podcast, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online. Subscribe on one of your 13 favorite platforms for podcasts. Please join us October 1, 2, and 3. Check out this website, engagingvirtualmeetings.com/CON for a conference. This is the 5th annual, the first hybrid. You got to be there. And if you want to be like Jim and Leanne, make sure and go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, select interview, and you too could be the next guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. We'll see you next time.
Don't we start people and keep old people? Show you got heart.